Am I the a-hole for refusing to share my success with parents who ignored me for years? Before we got to the story, I plan to give away 100 USD to whoever has the best opinion regarding this matter. So stay tuned, and I'll announce the winner in the few next videos. You only have to post your opinion on the comment below and consider to like and subscribe so that you'll not miss the announcement and many other future giveaway. Thanks, and back to the story. I'm 28 years old female. Never thought I'd be in a position where I'd have to ask this question. But recent events have left me questioning everything I thought I knew about family, success, and self-worth. I'll do my best to explain the situation and why I'm feeling so conflicted. Growing up, I was the definition of an invisible middle child. My older brother, Mark, was the golden child, athletic, popular, and academically gifted. My younger sister, Amy, was the baby of the family, doted on and protected. And then there was me, stuck in the middle, desperately trying to carve out an identity for myself. My parents weren't abusive in the traditional sense. They provided for my basic needs, food, shelter, clothing. But emotionally, I might as well have been a ghost. My achievements were met with indifference, my struggles with impatience. I can count on one hand the number of times I remember my parents attending my school events or showing any real interest in my life. I learned early on that if I wanted something, I had to get it myself. When I needed new clothes for school, I started babysitting. When I wanted to join the debate team, I found my own way to and from practices. My parents were always too busy with Mark's games or Amy's recitals to bother with my activities. This pattern continued through high school and into college. I worked multiple jobs to put myself through school, while my parents paid for both Mark and Amy's education in full. When I graduated with honors, my parents didn't even attend the ceremony, citing a conflicting commitment to one of Amy's dance performances. I still remember the sting of sitting alone at my graduation, watching other students celebrate with their families. I had invited my parents months in advance, but they claimed they couldn't miss Amy's recital. It was just one more reminder of where I stood in the family hierarchy. After college, I struggled to find my footing in the job market. I bounced between unfulfilling office jobs, barely making ends meet. During this time, my parents' indifference turned to thinly veiled disappointment. They would make comments about how Mark was thriving in his law career, or how Amy was pursuing her master's degree, always with a pointed look in my direction. Family dinners became an exercise in humiliation. My parents would gush over Mark's latest big case or Amy's academic achievements, then turn to me with a sigh and ask, "So are you still at that temp job?" No matter how hard I worked or how much I tried to explain my career goals, they always seemed to view me as the family disappointment. It was during one particularly low point, after losing yet another soul-crushing job, that I decided to take a risk. I had always been passionate about sustainable fashion, and I had an idea for a business that would upcycle vintage clothing into modern, eco-friendly pieces. With nothing left to lose, I poured every cent of my savings into starting this venture. The first year was brutal. I worked around the clock, doing everything myself: designing, sewing, marketing, accounting. I lived on ramen noodles and slept on a futon in my tiny studio apartment that doubled as my workshop. When I reached out to my parents for emotional support, they brushed me off, telling me to get a real job and stop playing around with clothes. I remember one particularly painful conversation where my mom said, "Honey, it's time to grow up. Not everyone can be successful like Mark or talented like Amy. There's no shame in accepting a normal office job." Her words cut deep, but they also fueled my determination to prove her wrong. Slowly, things started to turn around. Few of my pieces caught the eye of a local fashion blogger, and suddenly I had more orders than I could handle. I hired my first employee, then my second. I moved into a proper workshop. Before I knew it, my little business had grown into a respected brand with a cult following. As my success grew, so did media attention. I was featured in several national magazines as a rising star in sustainable fashion. My online store was booming, and high-end boutiques were clamoring to carry my line. For the first time in my life, I felt proud of myself and confident in my abilities. And that's when everything changed with my family. Suddenly, my parents couldn't stop talking about their entrepreneur daughter. They began showing up unannounced at my workshop, bragging to my employees about how they had always supported my dreams. They started calling me regularly, asking about the business and dropping hints about financial troubles they were having. At first, I was confused but hopeful. Maybe this was their way of trying to mend our relationship. Maybe they were finally seeing me for who I was. But as time went on, their true motives became clear. It started with small requests. My mom asked if I could lend her money for a new car, promising to pay me back. She never did. My dad hinted that he had always wanted to invest in a business and that mine seemed like a sure thing. They began introducing me to their friends as our successful daughter and volunteering my services for charity events without asking me first. I found myself in the surreal position of suddenly being the family favorite. At gatherings, my parents would steer conversations towards my business, bragging about my accomplishments and taking credit for my success. We always knew she had it in her, they'd say, conveniently forgetting all the times they'd dismissed my dreams. Mark and Amy, unused to being overshadowed, began to show signs of resentment. Mark would make snide comments about how anyone can get lucky in business, while Amy would pointedly talk about the stability and respectability of traditional career paths. The family dynamic had shifted, and not necessarily for the better. The final straw came last month. My parents invited me over for dinner, a rare occurrence, and ambushed me with a business proposal. They had drawn up papers to become silent partners in my company in exchange for a significant portion of the profits. When I asked what they would be contributing, they said their years of parental guidance had led me to this success, so they deserved to benefit from it. I was stunned. All those years of neglect, of making me feel invisible and worthless, and now they wanted to cash in on my hard work? I declined their offer as politely as I could, but they didn't take it well. They accused me of being ungrateful, of forgetting where I came from. My mom cried about how she had sacrificed everything for her children, while my dad raged about how I owed them for raising me. The argument quickly escalated. Years of pent-up frustration and hurt came pouring out. I reminded them of all the times they'd missed my events, dismissed my achievements, and made me feel like I didn't matter. I told them how their sudden interest in my life felt hollow and opportunistic. My dad's face turned red with anger, while my mom's tears turned from sadness to indignation. I left their house that night feeling angry, hurt, and confused. Since then, they've been on a campaign to guilt me into reconsidering. They've enlisted my siblings to pressure me, with Mark lecturing me about family loyalty and Amy tearfully asking why I want to tear the family apart. The situation has become increasingly tense. My parents have started telling extended family members that I'm ashamed of where I came from and that success has changed me. At a recent family gathering, my aunt cornered me and gave me a lecture about the importance of honoring one's parents. My cousins who used to be friendly now regard me with a mix of envy and disapproval. I've held firm in my decision not to involve my parents in my business, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't taking a toll on me. Part of me feels vindicated. Finally, I have something they want, something that makes them see me. But another part feels guilty. They are my parents after all. Don't I owe them something for raising me, even if they were emotionally distant? Some friends have suggested that I throw my parents a bone, maybe hire them for some minor role in the company, or give them a small stipend. They argue that it would keep the peace and potentially help heal our relationship. But the idea of having them involved in any way in the business I built from nothing makes me feel sick to my stomach. I'm also worried about the long-term consequences of my decision. If I continue to refuse their involvement, am I closing the door on ever having a real relationship with them? Am I being too unforgiving, holding on to childhood hurts, instead of embracing this opportunity to connect? On the other hand, giving in feels like validating all those years of neglect. It feels like saying it's okay that they ignored me, that they can treat me as an afterthought for decades, and then swoop in to claim the rewards of my hard work. The stress of the situation has started to affect my daily life. I find myself distracted at work, replaying arguments in my head instead of focusing on design. I've started having trouble sleeping, plagued by dreams where I'm a child again, desperately seeking my parents' approval. My employees have noticed my change in mood, and I worry that this family drama could start to impact the business I've worked so hard to build. I've been seeing a therapist to work through my childhood issues, and she's supportive of my decision to maintain boundaries with my parents. However, she's also encouraged me to be open to the possibility of healing the relationship if genuine change occurs. But how can I tell if their change is genuine or just motivated by financial interest? There's a part of me that still craves my parents' approval and love. I can't help but wonder if giving them what they want might finally make them proud of me. But another voice in my head warns me, this could be the start of a slippery slope. If I give in now, will they feel entitled to make more demands in the future? I'm also concerned about the legal implications. While I started my business entirely on my own, there were a few times early on when I worked on designs in my parents' garage. Could they use this to claim some sort of stake in my company? I've considered consulting a lawyer, but the idea of taking legal precautions against my own parents feels wrong somehow. The whole situation has made me question my understanding of family obligation. Growing up, I was always taught that family comes first, that we support each other no matter what. But what happens when that support only flows one way? Do I have a duty to help my parents financially now that I'm successful, even if they never supported me emotionally? I worry about the example I'm setting for my younger cousins and nieces' nephews. On one hand, I want them to see the importance of self-respect and maintaining healthy boundaries. On the other hand, I don't want them to think it's okay to disregard family entirely. I fear that this conflict is creating divisions that will affect our family for years to come. There's also the question of my own future to consider. I'm at an age where I'm starting to think about having my own family someday. How will this conflict affect my relationships going forward? Will I be able to trust a partner with my success, or will I always be waiting for the other shoe to drop? And if I have children, how will I explain why they don't have a relationship with their grandparents? As my business continues to grow, I find myself facing decisions I never anticipated. There's talk of expanding internationally, and I've been approached about potentially selling the company for a substantial sum. These opportunities are exciting. They also fill me with anxiety. If I sell the business, will my parents feel even more entitled to a share of the profits? Will they see it as their retirement plan? I'm torn between my desire for familial reconciliation and my need to protect myself and my business. There are days when I'm tempted to give in, to write them a check and hope it solves everything. But deep down, I know that money won't fix the underlying issues. It won't erase years of feeling invisible and unimportant. So guys, I turn to you for perspective. Am I the whole for refusing to share my success with my parents? Am I justified in keeping them at arm's length from my business? Or am I allowing past hurts to cloud my judgment? Should I consider giving them some small role or financial support to keep the peace? Or is maintaining this boundary the healthiest choice for me in my future? I'm really struggling with this decision and its implications for my family relationships and my own peace of mind. Any advice or outside perspective would be greatly appreciated.